Good evening, everyone. I can't tell you how much it means to me to be here. Not just saying PJ, but having PJ right here with us. To all those who are here with us, our president, our members of the diplomatic corps, all friends, family of PJ Patterson. We called him young, gifted, and black. For those of us who were really the first post-independence generation, it was not just a description of his physical attributes. He was the embodiment of the search for identity in an environment which at the time condemned everything that was black. You know, a confession, even his afro was important to those of us who were at school, because we used to take the picture and show the teachers who told us we could not come to school with the afro, to show them that an eminent person had one of those things called an afro. So from those days, we were adducing his name in evidence. But the identity went beyond the blackness crowned with an afro. We were intrigued that a young black man who had pulled up himself by his own bootstraps and had achieved excellence in a world that does not always honor meritocracy, that he was emerging as a legal luminary, an advocate extraordinaire, but he was willing to give up all of that for political service. Nearly 60 years later, we know that his choice was not just a career option, but a definition of who he is and what he stands for. Believe it or not, his walk and talk at that time also convinced some of us who were interested in politics that the PNP was the party with the ethos that we wanted to embrace, because it championed the paramountcy of the ordinary people in providing opportunities for all. Fast forward nearly 60 years. The PJ we now know demonstrated some of the most vital attributes consistent with nation building. And I've tried to identify some of them. PJ is intentional, he's deliberate, and thinks strategically. His choices are not myopic. He has an eye for the long game. How many of you recall his promise? I will return. Where did he ultimately want to be? What he wanted to achieve? Those were the matrices of his life. He would not sacrifice the long term for immediate gain. I recall that it must have been 1992, or 1997, sorry, when CAFE and other civil society insisted that the Carter Center should be invited to come and monitor the elections. Well, we were outraged. His cabinet all but dismissed him. He sat there, he listened to us, and we carried on. He didn't say a word. He left. He called me in the evening. I was his general secretary. He said, let me tell you something. I think it is wise to invite the Carter Center. And he gave me a history of why you should not always be impetuous in your thinking. Well, the Carter Center came, and the rest is history. PJ probably presided over the most rambunctious cabinet. Just think, Roger Clark, Danny Buck, late colleagues. Then you had Peter Phillips, who whenever he did this, intended to speak for at least half an hour in cabinet. Then there was KD, who was the most disruptive person in the world. Is he here? No? And of course, my friend Juno. Now, they spoke incessantly, but in many ways they probably were speaking to each other because PJ never intervened. He made them talk and talk and talk. And at the end of it, he would summarize what was said. Not necessarily giving his opinion, but summarize. He has a very unique leadership style. He doesn't pressure you. As a member of his cabinet, he allows you to do your work. I think Vin kind of mentioned that. If he had confidence in you, then go ahead and do what you have to do. But the next morning he would call you and say, let me tell you something. And he would try to set you on the right path. He was a nurturer. He believed in the development of people. But he was not a tribalist. He was one who believed that everyone had an opportunity and should be given an opportunity. I think everybody has referred to his keen listening skills. Sometimes when you're talking, he would do this, but he never intervened. But don't be fooled. He has heard every word you have said, and he's processing it. And you should also appreciate the meaning of his silences. If you don't get that, you will make a mistake. You may misinterpret and you may misstep. You will never know what he really thinks until he is ready to reveal it to you. In fact, one of my late JLP friends, I'm not going to call his name, we used to have some of the most tumultuous times at the EAC in its early years. And PJ decided to call a meeting. We have to applaud Comrade Patterson for standing up during those years because his own colleagues said he was selling out the People's National Party by having this Electoral Advisory Commission. But he stood his ground because he said the democracy was at fault. So this person, PJ called a meeting, and he called me afterwards, this JLP person, before the meeting was held, and he said, you know what? Eddie really don't like meeting with PJ, you know. I said, why? He says, because PJ never shows his hands at the meetings. You don't know what he's thinking. He said, in fact, Eddie says he sits on his hands during the meetings, and you don't know what he's thinking. Well, I thought that was a compliment, even if Eddie didn't like it. He is hardworking. Don't go into any meeting and don't prepare yourself for PJ, because he has gone through this everything and more. As one of his general secretaries, I know that I could not fool PJ about anything. He focused on every detail. I think Comrade Vin can tell you, anybody who worked with him. And more recently, I've had the opportunity of working with him on politics. Did you know he's a WhatsApp specialist? I was quite shocked myself. And he gave me an assignment. And he checked upon it every hour of the day that I was completing it. But what fascinated me about it was just how broad and deep his thinking was. And it was about politics and about the elections. He has a photographic memory. What you long forgot, he always remembers. I was struck, I think about 2 or 3 years ago. Something happened and we were talking, and he reminded me of something that I said in about 1981 after the 1980 elections. I'm not going to tell you what it is, right? But he reminded me that I said it, where I said it, and the impact it had on him. He has an elephantine memory. He never forgets. Intellectually, he's one of the most profound persons I know. This is because he reads and he analyzes and he thinks through issues. And many have spoke about his generosity of spirit. I think as a good Baptist, he embraces the behavior that Jesus advocated. He doesn't stand on the corner and preen about what he has done. But anybody who was associated with PJ knows what he has done, especially at your most difficult moments. My daughter asked me to say a special thanks and tribute to him. She was going to South Africa, and PJ wrote everybody, including the president of South Africa, to say that she was coming. And that, to her, made her visit there, her studies there, that more impactful. He nurtures others, including his family. I remember PJ warning the late Comrade Monteith and I that anyhow his daughter don't get a scholarship for Immaculate, we're going to have a hard time, because he was getting ready to retire and he wanted to pick her up in the evenings to carry her to his home so that he could nurture her as his granddaughter. That is the measure of the man. He continues his mission of improving the lives of others. This is what he's doing now with such passion. As we celebrate your life, sir, we know the passion with which you approach everything that we know. We know the guiding principles by which you have lived. And these principles are probably embodied best in St. Paul's saying to the Philippians, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue and if there be any praise, think on these things. This has been the life of our 90-year-old president. Still former president, but still one of the leading lights of our party. You may not live for another 90 years, who knows? But what we know, that your contribution has been beyond anything that we could have ever hoped for or imagined. All the best to you, sir.